Welcome back to another edition of the Gabagools podcast. I'm your host Jeff. With me today, as always, the Cuzzo Dan. How we doing?
I'll tell you how I'm doing. I am great. But first of all, I know we like to talk about the weather here once we start. I mean, the weather, if you haven't looked outside, it's the best we've had all year. So that's great. And I'll also say this. The podcast is named Gabagools. Have you ever had a slice of gabagool? It is delightful.
Yeah, it's Capicola.
Hey, you know what? You can call it what you want, but you know what? I'm a big fan of any of those kind of sliced meats, and you know what? I felt like Tony Soprano, trying to go to the deli and order some gabagool.
Absolutely, and you also worked for Jersey Mike's back in the day too, didn't you?
Oh yeah. 3 years and some change. Those were fun
Yep.
days.
Yeah, no, so did I. That's why it's funny that we both worked with like a company that basically was huge for the Italian sub. That was probably the most popular back then too.
Yeah, and they just finished up their month of or the Day of Giving or whatever in March. So
Yeah,
I don't know how many commercials you saw for that, but it had to be like
so
300
many.
for me.
Yeah, and you know what's funny is I think my store or like the store I worked at the one year we won because I think we were promised we were supposed to like go like sit in the Blackhawks box or sit in the box that they own at the United Center for like a Hawks game or something, and it ended up only being like the franchise owner and like the GM. So it was like, oh, okay, cool. You know, making sure we had all these crazy sales, but that we'll digress from that.
That's Peter Cancro for you.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move into some sports. Huge week. And a lot of implications for playoffs for NBA and NHL, but and we can recap the men's and women's NCAA, but like more recently, let's talk some UFC.
Yeah, I don't know how many of these fights, if you caught any of them, but I mean, this was UFC 300. Just a little background. The last couple years, I mean, Dana White has basically had me right here. I mean,
I
the
see
UFC.
that.
I wasn't that big into it in high school, but I'll tell you though. I don't know. A couple years ago, I'm hooked. So this card was great. This was definitely the best card he's put together. Kudos to Dana White and Hunter. Very good job there. Um, I mean, it started at 5 o'clock with the early prelims. There were some really good fights. The fight that started everything last night was Figueiredo and Garbrandt. Ah, man, I mean that's a fight of the night main event on a lot of other on any other card. Um, that's I mean Figueredo's. I mean he's a champ. He knows what he's doing. He's just so good. Moved up. I think he moved up a weight class, put a couple pounds on. Still looked great. I was hoping that fight was going to be a little more stand up because Garbrandt is just lightning quick. I mean,
I
he's
saw
got to
that.
be. Oh my God, he's like the fastest guy I think I've ever seen. He's the closest thing we have to a cheetah in human form. Um, that I was hoping it'd be more stand up, but Figueredo's just so friggin' good. He's got the experience, so he took him by submission, I think, in round two. Then you had Bobby Green and Jim Miller, a couple of veterans of the sport. Miller looked good in that first round, and then Bobby Green just got comfortable, man. And he fights so weird. He's got his hands basically down by his knees, fights like this. But he's another one of those guys who kind of slips in without being touched, touches you up a little bit, and by the end of the fight, I mean, Jim was just a bloody mess. So a couple of really good fights to start. Even the Jalen Turner Moicano fight. Turner, I thought, had him knocked out at the end of the first. Put his hands up, so it's like, hey, I got you. And then Moicano gets up, and then Moicano turns around in the second round and submits him. So kind of an interesting way to start the early prelims. Um, then we had Kayla Harrison make her debut. Um, boy, I mean, the betting odds for that fight, she was a big time favorite over Holly Holm, who's no slouch in her own right. She's
Yeah,
got
yeah. That name that one reminds me of when Ronda Rousey was fighting. I've been out of the game for UFC for quite some time.
no worries. I'm the guy for you. But the man, I mean, Kayla Harrison said she was coming over, multiple time Olympic gold medalist. Basically, has won every big tournament. She said, if not once, twice. She came over and said, "I'm gonna make mincemeat of Holly," and she did that. I mean, I don't know if you saw her. I mean, her arms are bigger than mine, and it's not even close. I'm no bodybuilder, as you can see. I'm not, I'm no Arnold Schwarzenegger, but I mean, she is one big woman. I mean, that is not someone I'd want to be in a dark alley with. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Um, then you had, I mean, obviously there were a couple other good fights. Yuri, I thought Yuri could have been on the main card over Bo Nickel, but you know what? Still a great card. Yuri did his thing over Rakic, which I thought he would do. Bo Nickel fight on the main card, probably the weakest one, but he still took care of business. Um, Charles Oliveira and Arman Sarukian, I believe I'm saying that correctly. Don't quote me on that, but
I won't. I won't. I'm taking you at your word.
man, I mean, you want to talk about a fight that I'm sure most people would have liked to see another couple rounds in. That was a three-rounder. Man, I mean, I Oliveira had Arman twice in that fight where I thought, okay, like he might be going to sleep, he's tapping, whatever. Arman fights his way out of it, and I really hadn't seen that kid fight. Wow, that kid, that was one of the biggest takeaways for me was how good that kid was. He looked like he was ready. He wanted to jump into the lion's den and go after a big top guy like Oliveira, and he looked the part. And I mean, they just mentioned at the end of this. I think Dana might have mentioned this in his post fight interview, but he mentioned a couple fights that are coming up now in June.
Yes.
Islam is going to be headlining against Dustin, so big news there. I wouldn't have minded if they did Islam and this Arman kid, because I think they fought a couple years ago and they both had a real good fight. But kudos to Dustin; he's been doing his thing.
Is that
And
Dustin
then
Poirier or
yeah,
Dustin? Okay, that's what I was
yeah,
making sure.
yep, him and his hot sauce are gonna try to take down Islam. That hey should be a good fight. We'll see how many times Islam tries to take that to the ground. But
Isn't his nickname back to Dustin? Isn't his nickname the Cowboy?
that was
Or-
Cerrone.
Oh, okay. Because I was gonna say I thought Dustin Poirier was supposed to retire like 3 years ago, and I keep seeing his name.
You know what? He is a veteran of the sport, but he's still got that dynamite in his hands. He looks.
Yeah.
We'll see. I'm excited for that one. And then they mentioned, if you didn't hear, the big one,
Yes.
obviously,
Yes. This is the
Conor
one I was like,
McGregor
yeah,
coming back to fight
a movie
Iron
star.
Michael Chandler. Yeah, the movie star. I mean,
Did you see moving into that movie? Did you watch Roadhouse with Jake Gyllenhaal?
so I have not seen it,
Oh,
but
you'll enjoy it.
yeah,
Hilarious.
yeah,
Hilarious. McGregor is hilarious in it.
yeah. I'm sure you've seen that meme or that GIF or whatever of him walking
Yeah.
out. It's like, where is everyone? I mean, like,
Yeah.
I can only imagine
Oh,
the rest
some
of
of the
that movie.
one-liners just make me laugh. I'll let you enjoy it live for that one, but yeah, that's one I was excited for. I feel like that's been since McGregor was on what is the Ultimate Fighter. I feel like it's been one of those things that was building up, and they should have put it on there. But I thought McGregor kept failing the drug test, so they had to keep pushing it back because he kept testing positive for steroids. Which I mean, if you've looked at McGregor, his head's huge, so
Yeah,
clearly
he got big, that's for sure.
yeah, he's
He,
he's way too big.
he,
So we'll see what he looks like when it comes down to the fights. But yeah, McGregor's good for the sport. I'll be honest. I watched a couple of his fights, and then going back even further, Forrest Griffin was a guy that I watched. So I've been pretty out of the game for UFC, but yeah, the McGregor fight I might actually watch.
that I mean that fight's been building for a while now, so that one you almost have to break out it's the red panty night, as Connor likes to say. So that's gonna be a big one. Just to close on the UFC really quick, the last three fights, Gagey Holloway. I was on the Gagey train. I'll be honest with you. I thought Gagey looked good. His last couple fights looked really good. Maybe was a little less reckless, a little more consistent. I just thought it was his time. And Max with that spinning back kick at the end of the first to break Gagey's nose pretty much put an exclamation on that fight. I mean, Gagey's a warrior. Went out on his shield right there at the end. I mean, that was freaking awesome. I'll be honest with you. So I mean, great. Kudos to Max. He looked probably the best I think I've ever seen him. He looked great. He went up, I think, a couple pounds too, and he physically looked great. And in the fight, probably the best I've seen him. So great for Max. The co-main with Weili Zhang and I can't say the last name, so we're going to go with the first name, Yan. That's a little bit easier for me.
There you go.
Man, another really good fight. Looked like Yan got choked out at the end of the first. Then she comes back and starts throwing punches and everything in the second round like nothing happened. And that ended up being, I mean, you want to talk about a fight. And the women fight don't always get as big of a hype or as good of a rap. That fight lived up to it. That was a great fight. And then of course the main event, Alex Pereira is my guy. I mean, he is one of the scariest human beings I've ever seen. And going up against Jamal Hill, a guy I didn't know too much about, but seemed very confident in the press conferences and everything. I mean, one punch didn't even get him super clean. Uh, what else can you say? I mean, Alex at the end of the fight said he wants to go up to heavyweight. So now, everybody basically was like, what? I mean, it was a drop the phone, drop the mic, drop,
Yeah.
whatever, drop your pants, if you will. It was one of those like holy Toledo moments, but
Right. Right.
unbelievable night. It was from start to finish was just like the fights were just crazy.
Yeah, it sounds like it was a hell of a fight, and it was pretty hyped up too. I know that, and I know that the one in June will be pretty big too. I don't know if there's anything in between that, but yeah, like I said, I'll probably tune into that one or at least catch some of the highlights beforehand. Um, anything else with the UFC?
You know what? I think you're right. I have to look. I think it slows down a little bit the
Yeah,
next month or so. But once June hits, I think we have those two. I think right like the first week and the last week of June. I think is what it is. So um, yeah. Other than that, can't wait for June.
absolutely. June's a good month. Um, that being said, let's move into last week. We finished up college basketball. Women's tournament was last Sunday. UConn or not UConn. South Carolina perfection. I think 38 or 39 and 0. Took down Caitlin Clark. Pretty much Caitlin Clark did everything she could. Shots weren't falling. South Carolina is just a well-oiled machine. They're well coached, well recruited. They had enough around them to take down. If Iowa didn't make their shots, it was pretty much tale as old as time with them, where it was pretty much over. And then men's side of it, UConn back to back. Purdue kept it close at halftime and then just kind of took off. They didn't do like I looked at their box score and it was pretty surprising to me that pretty much nobody else besides Zach Edey and I think one of their guards, I can't think of his name at the moment, but nobody else scored. Can't win against UConn that way. Uh, Good.
No, you can't. And it kind of interesting. We had basically the two better teams, if you will, win both of those games. I mean,
Yeah, pretty
um,
pretty easily too.
Iowa and Purdue both had really great years. There's
Yeah,
nothing to shake. They had great seasons, but South Carolina obviously being undefeated. I think they showed in that game that Caitlin Clark was projected to go one in the draft, but then I think two out of the next four were both on South Carolina. So
yeah, it's going to be a pretty loaded draft from pretty much this 2020 class. They're recruiting that pretty much put women's basketball on the map because Cameron Brink from Stanford is supposed to go two. And then the center from South Carolina, her name is slipping me at the moment, but she's supposed to be a top.
Cardoso.
Cardoso, yep, another highly recruited. She'll go in the top five probably, and then Angel Reese to declare as well. So we're seeing a lot of really talented, uh, you know, women's players come out. And did you see the news that Caitlin Clark's? So because she's going to go to the Indiana Fever, there every game. I think we'll say there's 26 games. I think 20 of them are going to be televised now because of Caitlin Clark. And then also many teams are anytime that the Indiana Fever are in town, they're upgrading their stadium to add more seats.
I did not see that, but they probably should, especially with what was going on this last year. It was you
It
could
is
call it
insane.
Caitlyn mania. I mean, it was unreal.
Yeah, and it's a real thing, and it's kind of funny. Did you see all the comments from some of the older women's basketball players? The one that Caitlyn broke her record said, like, oh, she was making like negative, basically talking bad about Caitlyn, saying that, like, you didn't break my record, probably because the 3-point line wasn't there, but basically just hating on her. And then Deanna Taurasi from UConn. She's in the WNBA, I think, still. And then because they had their own little broadcast on ESPN too, kind of like what the Manning cast does during that. And they pretty much, and who was the other one? One of the other former UConn players, they were just bashing, Caitlin. And so it was just kind of surprising that, these people are saying like, oh, well, she didn't win a national championship. She can't be like the greatest of all time. And I think just overall, I think the whole championship, yes, that's why you play the game. But I think the discussion needs to be really changed of, what is considered the GOAT, because yeah, you can say multiple players are elite and they're not the GOAT because they didn't win. Well, I mean, look at right now. We have Joe Burrow, we have Josh Allen. These are great quarterbacks that might not ever win because Patrick Mahomes is here, and just stats don't lie. But it was just kind of funny that, two UConn players that get all the All Americans, the McDonald's All Americans every year, you're playing with a team like that are stacked, can talk shit about another good player. So I thought that was kind of surprising.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. I mean, I don't know if I heard too much of the hate that Caitlyn was getting, but um, you'd have to go back and look and see. Like I've heard of Diana Taurasi, and didn't she win all 4 years at UConn?
Yeah, and then I think it was Brianna Stewart too. That the name came back to me. They both, I think they won almost all 3 to 4 years when they were there. So they're coveted and they won the championships. And I think there's a lot of jealousy going on, in my opinion. Just they didn't get the spotlight that Caitlin Clark did, and we'll see why. I mean, I think it's just because of how it's kind of Steph Curry ish. If you remember when Steph Curry was coming into the league, 3-point shooter, really put the 3-point game, changed the game, and put the 3-point shot back on the map. Not just a Ray Allen, Kyle Korver, sit in the corner and just pop it. Taking guys off the dribble and really just making it his own.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Curry. I mean, Caitlin Clark is the closest thing the women have probably seen to a Steph Curry because she's shooting from the logo too. So,
Yeah, yeah, Sabrina. If you remember the All Star weekend for NBA, Steph Curry did that like 3-point contest against Sabrina. I can't spell her last name or say her last name, I should say. They had a 3-point contest and it was pretty close, but Steph ended up edging her out. But like they were talking already about doing a Klay Thompson versus Caitlin Clark too.
well, that'd be interesting. I
Yeah,
I
so I
I
think
tune
there's
in to
gonna be
watch that.
absolutely. I think there's just going to be a lot more, you know, televised games, and it's going to grow it, which is good. That's what you want. You want to televise all these sports because they're, over the summer when, especially during the All Star break, there's nothing on. I don't watch tennis. I don't really watch golf. So like the Masters, not even going to touch on that. I think Scotty Schefter, um, is projected to win. But we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, getting back on the rails. I was kind of surprising, but the outcomes not really surprising. We had the hope, we wanted the underdog to win, but we can put college basketball to bed. Oh no, can't put it down to bed yet. Two things. We had Coach Calipari go to Arkansas, and I thought it was interesting. For one, that he left Kentucky, I think it was well overdue. You know, Pretty much he didn't win there. He won, I think, one national championship in however long he was there, but it was just a recruiting. It was pretty much a good glorified AAU team. Essentially, just you went there, you played your 1 year, and then you went top 10 in the NBA draft. Um, but it was interesting he picked Arkansas, and basically the reason was an Arkansas booster had a ton of money, and of all people, it's a Tyson Foods. It's the grandson of the original owner of it. So
Well, maybe he likes chicken. I don't know. I mean, you can have a lot of chicken over there, right?
it's got to have something. I have no idea, but yeah, money talks for sure.
That was interesting, though. I don't know how long Calipari was at Kentucky. I know he was there a little while.
At least
And
12
he was
years. At
one
least.
of those. He was one of those schools where it's like every year, okay, we'll see what we'll see what Kentucky can do. But they also had a lot of early exits, and
That's how you
that's
don't win.
gonna strain the relationship, I'm sure, with the boosters and the people who are you're trying to get money from. You're trying to say, hey, well, we didn't. I mean, this year was wild. They lost to Oakland in that first round. I mean,
And they weren't very
who?
good. Oakland was not a good team.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just one of those weird things where it's like Kentucky, they're going to have all these guys go to the NBA, and Oakland's going to have people selling them insurance.
Yeah,
And no offense to the guys on Oakland, but how does that happen? You could say that's madness. You could say what you want. Calipari, we'll see what he does. Arkansas is an interesting school. It's definitely not as big as Kentucky or some of the other,
blue
big
blood.
brands, but
Yeah.
hey, if they've got some cash, I'm sure Calipari is still a very big name. You're still going to get
Oh
some
yeah.
some kids to go play for you over there, but we'll see how Arkansas is this next season with him. They're definitely going to be one of the more interesting teams.
It definitely will be. I was interested to see that they actually only have one player on their roster currently.
I saw that Calipari was like he came over and he's just like, okay, so we're here and everything. He's like, well, we don't have a team, and then
Yeah.
I saw that thing where they have like one senior or whatever on the team. So yeah,
Right.
you gotta build this team this year, but we'll
Transfer
see what he
portal,
does.
he'll be able to do it with NIL money in the transfer portal pretty easily. I can see it.
Yeah.
Um, but moving back into Kentucky, Mark Hope from BYU, new head coach there. He was actually a part of their '96 championship team, so he had the roots there. I want to say BYU made the tournament back to back years, so new blood. A lot of coaching transfers, which is kind of funny because obviously the former Arkansas coach went to USC, and the USC coach went
Mm.
to SMU of all places, which I thought was really interesting. Andy Enfield. But yeah, back to Kentucky. We'll see what they're gonna have to change the way they play. They've already lost two players to the transfer portal because Calipari's gone. Also, obviously, the NBA draft too.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know much about this. Is it Mark Hope or Pope?
I thought it was Hope. I think you might be right. It might be Pope.
I thought I remembered. I was like, oh, so Kentucky hired the Pope. Interesting. But um, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how they are. I don't know much about the guy. I think you're right. I think BYU was in the tournament back to back years, but I think they did better last year. Obviously, this year with the first round exit to
I think both years.
it might have been. So hey, you know what? We'll see. I mean, I don't really know what to think with Kentucky this next year with the new head coach. So they might be all right. I don't know if you can project them to be a top couple seed, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see what the transfer portal does and the recruiting to see if they even keep the recruits. That's going to be another thing. People will probably leave or come back, but at least he was at Kentucky beforehand, so he knows what to do to win. So we'll see. I think we could actually close the book, as they say, on the college basketball season, and spring games were going on for football, but we won't touch on that quite yet.
Yeah, and I think I saw right before we started this podcast that the Bulls were getting ready to start, and I honestly chuckled when I saw that notification come up.
Well done on your transition on that one, because that was my next point, was going to be the Bulls made the play-in tournament, so they play Wednesday against the
Yippee!
Hawks. Yeah.
Yippee Skippy!
Well, do you know what's funny is if you look at the West, it's like the Lakers. I think the Suns could end up in there. Um, the Golden State Warriors. So it's actually going to be fun for the West, but the East is just, if the Heat end up in there again, yeah. But it's really funny because if you look at the standings, you got the Celtics, who are the, top team, locked up the first seed, home court advantage or whatnot. And they might have to face the Heat, which will not be an easy out because you got Jimmy Butler, who just turns it on, different animal. And then today, you have the three teams that are playing for the West one seed, which is Denver, Minnesota, and Oklahoma City. And they all have the same record, so they're facing for seeding. So it actually marks the first time in history through 81 games that all the same or the three teams have the same record and a chance to capture the number one seed in their conference.
And who would have thought coming into the year that, I mean, Denver, sure, you would have thought Denver would have been competing for the one seed, but who would have honestly thought Minnesota and OKC would be in that boat? I wouldn't have.
No, and you know what's funny is Oklahoma City. I don't know if we ever talked about how they have like a ton of picks still coming in the following years. Just the way they like kind of set that team up, they've hit on some of their draft picks, and they have some studs on their team. Uh, the Chet Holmgren commercial during the tournament was killing me. I don't know if you've
Well, the
caught
one where
that.
he's singing
Yeah,
with who's the guy he's with? I know the guy he's with too. Yeah,
uh,
I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
yeah, but there, do you know who also is going to be really good is Shea Giltris
SGA.
Alexander.
He's
Yes,
already
SGA.
really good.
Yeah, he might win the MVP because he took a team that was 10th seed last year and is going to put them in the potentially number one if they win. I don't think they have the advantage. I'd have to see how it would fall out, but to still even be in that conversation, he deserves it. But jo- uh, the Joker is way too good. He'll probably pull away with the MVP for
He,
that.
that's a really interesting point for the MVP, especially in the West. Um, I've been hearing this Ant kid's name the whole year. SGA, we saw him a couple times early in the season. I didn't know he was as good as he was. So first of all, yes, SGA, he's a bona fide. He's a star. He's not just a stud. He has become a star. He is freaking really good, and so is this Anthony Edwards. There's a reason
Oh yeah, Anthony
teams
Edwards is
like,
that. He's that dude. He is
oh
that
my
dude.
oh my goodness. I mean, they were calling him. My one buddy Sean was telling me about him early in the year. They're calling him the Ant Man, and I'm like, and the Ant Man? That's the best you can come up with? We were just
Right.
watching March Madness. We had Kling Kong. We're gonna.
Yeah.
You want to tell Ant Man? First of all, don't love the nickname. Love the player.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh
Been
my
high
good
on him
lord.
since he's been drafted. To be honest, like I followed him pretty. I don't really watch a whole lot of NBA. I honestly, to digress a little bit, I've watched 0 minutes. I'm actually watching it right now as we speak, just to kind of be in the loop of it. But I've watched like 0 minutes, and I'm actually in a fantasy basketball league in the championship watching 0 minutes.
That's hey, you can go off, son.
Yeah.
Give
The
me a
year of
little.
the year of the champion, essentially, with baseball sweeps, and you're looking like you're 0-2 in that, but we'll finish that for
Oh,
another day.
jeez, thanks. He's trying to pour salt in the wound there, huh?
Oh, I'm pouring a tub of salt on it. Anyway, back to the NBA. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, and then you have the New York Knicks, who are my kind of sleeper for it because Jalen Brunson has just broke out, and he was a part of those Villanova teams that I think made the tournament and made the final.
And let's go back a few more years since you mentioned Jalen Brunson. He is a I think I was D211 in Palatine High School. As you may or may not know, he was a Stevenson kid. So he's
That's
basically
right. You're right. Yes.
pretty wild. My buddy Brennan was real big in like some of that stuff when we were in high school, and he
Yeah.
was telling us about Jalen Brunson and how good the kid was. And then when I heard that a local kid like that went to Villanova, I was like, oh man, this is pretty wild. Then I got to see him play there for a couple years, and turned out to be a really really good college player. Now fast forward a few more years, uh, Cuban should have never let him go, in my opinion, because
Oh yeah.
look at the player he's blossomed into. I understand you wanted Luka and Kyrie, and Dallas has been really good this year, I think. But man, Brunson looks like he's blossomed into a star. He looks great, and the Knicks could be an interesting team. They've got a few players. I like DiVincenzo. He's not bad. They've got some other guys over there. Uh, but Brunson, every time I hear Brunson, I always think of Stevenson and how
Oh yeah.
that's just so cool.
Yeah. It's cool when you play against some of those players. We actually one of the not rivals, they one of the schools in our conference when I was in high school, they had a player go to the NFL, which was pretty cool. He played a couple games. He had to retire for concussions, but
Mm.
still pretty cool to be like, yeah, we saw him play, we saw him run track. He played baseball. He was like just a monster of a human being. But it's kind of cool to be able to reference that.
And getting back to the Bulls, just for the quickest of quicks,
Yeah,
I think we've had the 9 seed almost the entire season, and I'm joking with that,
accomplishment.
but it's been probably at least the last 2 months. Yeah, I'll give us a clap for that.
Absolutely.
That's tough to do. That really is tough to do. As I mean, I thought the group we had was better than a ninth seed, especially in the East. I really, really did. And the last couple of years, it's been basically we're getting the ninth seed because that's who we have. And a couple injuries have hurt the team. No lie. Lonzo. No one's really even talked about Lonzo. Who knows if that kid's ever going to play again? But I
I
liked
saw
when
he
we
was
brought him
sprinting
over.
finally. Yeah, he was sprinting.
Yeah, all right, that's great. It's good that you can sprint, bud. Levine really hurt. We overpaid him, and with him getting hurt, it didn't hurt. It didn't help. And then Patrick Williams, I think, was in a contract year, and he was playing really well too. And then he obviously got hurt. So some injuries have hurt us. We've had guys step up, but I've been in a very similar boat as you. I was watching some games at the beginning of the year, and then after it was started to be like, okay, this is the same thing as last year, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to watch tonight. And you know what? I've been glad because they've been taking my heart and just ripping it out. It's just the last couple of years have just been, you can't watch them.
Well, it's a Jerry owned team, so that's what you have to deal with. So welcome to the pain of just watching your team just suck. But we'll save baseball talk for a little bit later. But team in the same building with the Blackhawks, not a whole lot to talk about. Obviously, they've been eliminated for weeks, maybe even a month now. But Connor Bedard, 60 points in 65 career games, pretty good, to say the least. Should be should win the Rookie of the Year. Calder, I think it's Calder Cup, not Calder Cup. Either way, he's going to win the Rookie of the Year. And then the Hawks actually did sign a kid out of Michigan that they drafted a couple of years ago, Frank Nazar. That's going to be a name that you're going to want to remember. He's very fast. He played at Michigan. They were just eliminated out of the Final Four, or Frozen Four, I should say. They finished, I think, I don't know, whatever, third or fourth. Um, but they finally signed him. He's fast as hell. The comp would be Vincent Trocek for the Rangers. I know that name's way over your head, but pretty good player, really fast, should help the team. So hopefully Bedard's getting some help soon.
Are we still looking like we could be in the running for that Salabrini?
Yes, top two. We finished in the bottom two, so we'll have some ping pong balls to play with. I would be shocked if we don't get it again, just because that's how um, hockey rolls. You can't have an original six team that bad for that long. They tried for years with uh, the Oilers. Oilers had the top five pick or top number one overall pick for like 4 years in a row. Toronto, they got Austin Matthews, similar. So, some of those teams you just rebuild, but at least they have a direction. So, we'll touch on, maybe next week we'll touch on just the Eastern or not the Eastern, but like the playoff picture for that one. Some really good teams. Should be a good. If you haven't watched playoff hockey since the Hawks were in it, you should definitely tune in. It's faster play. Uh, you know, people who are hurt, they still play. So
Okay, yeah, I'll have to tune in. I'll have to watch some games.
yeah, a team that I should mention too is if the Detroit Red Wings win twice, they will eliminate the Flyers and Penguins because the Red Wings will have a higher maximum points. So Patrick Kane might be back in the playoffs, so that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure that'd be cool for all of us Blackhawk fans here. I'm sure it'd be a little, seeing him in that jersey. I'm sure is still kind of whatever, but yeah, it'd be cool.
Yeah. Moving into the other Jerry owned team and switching into baseball. Let's talk about the Sox. Another key injury again. These guys wanted Eloy's famous statement though before the season was like, "I want to play 150 games."
Yeah, yeah.
I wish I had the statistic on hand of how many games that those three have actually played, and those three meaning Luis Robert, Eloy Jimenez, and Moncada have played together. It's in the hundreds total since 2020. I think they all started coming up. Just awful, awful showing. That just shows that they don't. I mean, Moncada at least probably doesn't put in the effort that he should, or if he does, he's just an injury-prone player at this point, which we all kind of knew. But he's out for months. They were talking 3 to 6. Robert they said he might be back in 6 weeks, which is good. And then Aloy is ramping up to only get hurt again, in my opinion. So he'll be
Yeah.
back. But some fun statistics for you is the Sox have been shut out in 6 of the 14 games they've played, and they're a total of 2-12 and scored 1 run or less in 14 games.
Yeah, that's a recipe for a bottom couple team. We knew that going in, but it's definitely probably been even worse than you maybe would have assumed. Maybe a little bit.
It,
Um,
it's so bad. It's just so bad. It's laughable. They throw the ball into the outfield or into the infield from, left field. Benatendi was, I liked him a lot, but like I didn't have hopes with this team just because of where they were at. But he looks horrible. We got fleeced on that deal he signed, and just overall, Kopech looks good out of the bullpen. That's nice. So maybe we'll trade him to a contender and get something back. And then Garrett Crochet, he got roughed up yesterday against the Reds, but the Reds are a pretty good team. Uh, but he's been elite. He had 10 strikeouts and still gave up 5 runs.
I mean, we've already mentioned it. He's a stud. He's a legit ace. So hopefully he can stay healthy this year for you guys. Yeah, you guys have your top couple guys have gotten hurt again. Did I hear Robert's injury was maybe a little less severe than they may
Yeah.
have thought originally?
Yeah, and that's why I said I think they were looking at 6 weeks. I think I saw the outlook of it. Yeah, it's just a grade 2 strain of his hip, but there's no need to rush him back. I mean, you're gonna sell a couple extra tickets if he's there, but I mean, even then, doesn't matter.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, obviously that's a good thing. You don't want anything severe, but yeah, you don't want to rush them back. You guys are,
They might be
how
the
do
worst
I?
team in baseball. They might be the worst team in histories of like from 1901 on. They might actually hold the record for being the worst team. And people were talking about the A's being bad. The Sox are actually worse than that.
Oakland's won a couple games, which I'm a little
Yeah,
surprised on. I thought Oakland would win 45 games this year. I mean, I really
I
thought that
for
was a,
45.
I mean, yeah, it is pretty wild how some of these teams have not started well. I mean, you know what? You want to talk about teams that haven't started well? The Houston Astros right
Yeah,
now look like, I mean, I think most people assume that they're going to get their act together, but they've dug themselves quite a hole to start the year in a tough division. Seattle hasn't started that well either, but
yeah.
you got Texas who's been playing well. You don't want to be the White Sox, you don't want to be in their position where you're 2-12 or whatever to start the year. And I know Cleveland started the year well. Kansas City, they're like 10-5. They won
Yep.
6 or 7 in a row.
Bobby Witt
Um,
looks good.
Man, when he signed that deal a month ago or whenever, I mean, he had a great year last year. Everyone was talking about Acuna and Bobby Witt. If you look at his numbers, they were pretty. I mean, they weren't that good, but they were pretty close. He had a bunch of
Yeah.
stolen bases, bunch of homers, and he's gotten off to quite the start. So it's looking like Kansas City spent the money on the right guy there. But
Yeah.
for the White Sox, what are you going to do? You gotta hope that honestly, you got to move Robert. You got to move him. He's got a couple years of control. He's a stud. I know you'd like to keep him, but you move a guy like that when he comes back and he starts swinging the bat really good again. You should be able to be. I think you guys are already in a top 10 farm system or something. So if
It,
you,
it is it is looking better, but I mean, right now the only good thing about the team is how they're broadcasting the campfire milkshake, which actually looks pretty good in my opinion. 16 ounces might be something I try this. I'll go to 1 or 2 games probably just
you
because
know
I'll
what,
be there.
it's funny you brought up a milkshake because I actually had your game on a couple days ago and they were showing a spicy Creole chicken sandwich or something. I don't know
Oh,
if you've seen
that sounds
that, but
no, I haven't. Sounds delicious.
it sounded good. I forget what was on it, but it was some sort of like Creole seasoning or something, and it's I'm blanking on it, but I remember since you brought up the milkshake, I was like, oh, you know what? I remember about that chicken sandwich. Might have to go to a Sox game this year to try it. I mean, it
Oh, that's
sounded
what I
good.
would go for. Go for the beer, go for the hot dogs, go for the new food. That's all it's going to be about. And then you enjoy the nice day, get a tan.
You guys do
But
have
yeah,
some good food over there.
yes, that's the best part about the stadium is the food usually. Um, but yeah, and then on this day in 2021, Carlos Rodon had his no hitter. So that's
Oh,
about
really?
yeah. So that's pretty much the extent of what I'll talk about with the White Sox for this week. So if we want to shift over to the Cubs and talk about their West Coast trip, I they've been hot recently, winning and losing, but like you guys do get Justin Steele back next month. Apparently he's on track. Jameson Taillon should be back this week. They said his next start will be in the majors. Um, and then moving into the players, Christopher Morel and Michael Bush, they've been hot. They actually have been. Morel's kind of cooled off, but Bush 3 home runs in the last 3 games. And then your boy Shota, no runs given up at all this whole year.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Steele and Tyone because we're showing some promise there. Tyone, like you said, is coming back I think this week, and Steele I think they said was going to throw 25 pitches. I don't know if that was today or if that's coming up. So
Yep.
he's both, you know. Hopefully we get those guys back sooner than later, especially with a guy like Kyle Hendricks in the rotation. No offense, Kyle, but I think you've run your course with throwing 80, 82 miles an hour.
I think he ran his course like 3 years ago, and I think it's
Yeah,
because he had that deal, and I don't know why they've kept him. He's just so soft tossing, and I guess if
he
you get a
was
bad day,
he was the professor, and now he's not looking as witty as he once was. But um, Cubs, I mean, this past week it's been an all right trip. Hasn't been terrible, but we blew an 8-run lead the first game against San Diego. I see that smile over there. So
yep. I'm
yeah,
not
that was a
saying
tough
anything.
one.
Not gonna say anything.
You can't be San Diego's a good team, but you can't be
Yeah,
blowing 8-run leads. So that one hurts.
that was bad, but that's baseball though. That's baseball for you. It's to be expected. You're not gonna win like it's not the team of or I don't even know what to say about it. It's not the 2016 Cubs where they're putting up 17 runs a game and you know
Yeah,
jerking off
yeah,
emotions for that.
yeah,
But anyway,
yeah. Unfortunately, but um, yeah. I mean, we blew that lead. We came back, won the next game, and then we got clobbered in the rubber match, like 10-2 or something. So that wasn't great. And then the Seattle series, we've split the first two. We've got I think Assad on the mound today against Luis Castillo. Um, Castillo, I've liked for a while since he was on
so bad
Cincinnati,
this year.
but
He's
he's
been
not
so
pitched well. And Seattle hasn't been that good to start the year either. So I'm
right.
hoping we can take this series. Obviously, we should have taken 2 or 3 from San Diego, but we didn't. So hopefully we can even that out and take this rubber match from Seattle. Like I said, Assad's been throwing the ball really well. And you touched on everybody who's hitting well. Morel is a guy, he might have cooled off slightly, but he's a
Yeah, it's
guy
last week,
that
5 games at least.
he's a guy where the last couple seasons he hasn't had an everyday role, and
Yeah,
he's finally kind of been getting those everyday at bats. And you've seen, hey, the guy's a productive bat in there. So
totally.
it's been great to see him getting his at bats. Seiya has finally, I think, gotten comfortable and he's started to figure some things out. Obviously, the second half of the season last year, he was really good, and that's
Yep.
definitely carried into the start of this season. So we needed that. Um, and Cody's been, he's been getting some hits. I mean, probably a little cold right now, but I mean, he'll get it going. Same thing
Yeah.
with Dansby. Haps had a
Only
nice
April.
start to the year. Um, Horner's another one who's been a little cold with the bat, but if he gets it going, the thing that, like I said, that surprised me, the offense has been pretty solid this year. I wasn't sure how good the offense would be. It looks like the offense has kind of been our strong suit, and we just kind of have to figure out the pitching a little bit. So hopefully, when Tyone comes back, he can be the guy that we saw in the second half. And Steele already looked good opening day, so if he can stay healthy and look good, Shota, you mentioned, has looked great. I expect teams, once they've seen him a little bit and the book's out on him,
Yeah.
I expect teams to start scoring some runs. But he's been great so far. So a lot of good things to see. We've blown a couple games, so the bullpen needs to, You got to figure out the bullpen maybe a little bit, but it's still early.
That's it. That's something easy you guys can get.
Yeah, so hopefully, I mean, it's been a good start, other than a couple of those blown games. But yeah, it's been everything I've seen so far is good. I think the one thing that's been interesting, really, for both Central divisions, I think people thought the NL and the AL Central weren't going to be that strong. Again, we're only 2 weeks into the season, but right now, both Centrals look pretty good. I mean, Pittsburgh's gotten off to a great start. Um, Really, almost every team in the Central. The Cardinals are kind of 500, maybe a game or two under. And I think Cincinnati's right around that boat, too. They might be a game or two over now after playing you guys.
Yeah.
And Milwaukee's had a really good start to the year. So
Yeah.
the Central, I think, has surprised people at least early on, at least the NL. And then for you guys, too, Detroit and Kansas City had some hype coming into the season. I wasn't super sold on either of them winning the division, and I still am not. It's too early. But
Yeah.
they've gotten off to great starts, and so is Cleveland. So,
Yeah. Twins are battling some injuries too, and they're kind of banged up. So, they don't look as good as I thought they would, but
no,
still way too early.
yeah, it definitely too early. I picked Minnesota to win your division because they've been the team the last couple of years, and boy, if they don't get it going, I know it's early, but you start digging yourself a hole. Cleveland looks pretty good. I know they just lost Bieber, but they're winning a bunch of games. Kansas City, I mean, with 10-5 or something. I mean, I couldn't have predicted them to go 10-5. So
No.
it's early, but yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting start for both divisions.
Yep. And then just quickly around the league, Jackson Holiday got the call pretty much like right after we did our podcast, which is great. He hasn't done much, like if anything at all. I think he has like 5 or 6 strikeouts now. Um,
Has he gotten his first hit yet or no?
no, not yet,
I don't know if he
unfortunately.
has. Yeah, I mean, he will, but
Oh yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, he hasn't done much. Mookie Betts leads baseball in like a bunch of categories. He's got 24 hits, 16 walks, 6 home runs, 20 runs, and he's got an OPS of um, let me hopefully butcher this 1.200, so pretty high up there.
that's up there.
Quickly, staying in the National League, Max Meyer struck out 7 Braves yesterday, which is it's not a lineup to slouch at. Good to see him back after he had Tommy John, and he got recovered, or he finally recovered from it. So good to see there for the Marlins. They need every bright spot that they can.
Yeah,
Uh, and then Spencer Steer has been on fire with 3 home runs, 18 RBIs, and he's batting 367. And once again in a loaded Reds lineup.
yeah, I did see his numbers. I don't know if it was last night or the night before. I put your game on for a minute.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, no one's really talked too much about Cincinnati this year with winning our division or being whatever. They've got some of the best, if not the best, influx of young talent in our division. And I mean, everyone was talking about Ellie De La Cruz, and they had my guy Noelvi Marte get suspended for the first 80 games. He still looks like he's really good. Jonathan India's gotten lost in the shuffle over there. He's still really good.
yeah.
And
Matt
then
McCain or Matt McLean's on the IL too.
yeah, he was primed to have a big year, and that Christian Encarnacion Strand, he's gotten off to a cold start, but he's good. I mean, they've
He'll
got
bounce
so
back.
many good players, and yeah, I mean Steer, he's the one guy in that lineup you can't pitch to right now. I mean, Ellie's gotten off to a good start too, but with the way
Seeing
Steers, he's
oh yeah,
unbelievable.
seeing a beach ball up there.
Yeah,
Speaking of beach balls, the biggest one is that Angel Hernandez. He is just horrible, and he's going to be the single reason that robot umps make a quicker call, like quicker on the way to the show here.
yeah, he misses calls. I mean, it's tough to go. Being an umpire is a tough job. But Angel Hernandez, I mean, I could put a 6-year-old behind the plate and he could do a better job. Um, he he's terrible. I mean, he needs to hang him up. He gets booed by fans, by the players, by the coaches, probably every game that he's behind the plate. They need to petition him to not be behind the plate. I don't even want the guy to call balls down the line for first and third, but that's where he should be. Have him be one of those guys because when he's behind the plate, I mean, it's unbelievable.
What is Manfred doing? Like, is there no job reviews for these for these umps. I mean, he's just terrible, and hopefully soon they say enough is enough because he's just ruining the game. I watched like the most recent one was against I think Wyatt Langford for Texas. Three balls, or yeah, three balls that were outside the zone. He called strikes. It's like that dude doesn't want to be there. I think he's doing it as a gimmick now at this point. But yeah,
Now, are you, real quick, are you a proponent for the automated strike zone, or would you like to keep the
yeah.
guy behind the plate calling balls and
No,
strikes?
I'd like to see. I know that takes the tradition out of the game, and where the human aspect where you're calling balls and strikes. But I think it's gotten out of hand. I think Joe West was a big proponent of that too, where do you remember when he wore the little yellow band around it thing for the umps? Um, so do you,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I
you'll have
remember
to
that, but
you'll have to Google it. It's a hilarious photo of him just like holding his yellow. He's got like a yellow armband on for like the umps doing like their little strike that they did.
now if you do the automated strike zone, if you have a ball that's kind of half in and half out, you call that a strike? You call that a ball?
Half in, half out. I'd say strike.
So if it just nips a little bit of the edge, but most of it's off the plate, is that a ball? If a little
Yeah,
bit catches the plate, is that a strike?
I mean, I think that's where they would have to have like a very fine line of like if it hits this, if it hits this corner, you know, it'd be that's a good question. I don't really have an answer to it. I mean, I guess you'd have to go. I'd go strike. I mean, they want the game to move quicker. Just give them strike at this point.
Yeah, I would agree too. I mean, I think that's the tricky part with that is what exactly is a ball or what's a strike. But
Yeah,
once you
if
kind of
you're
figure out,
defined. Yeah, if it's defined, I think it's okay.
yeah, I'd be okay with it. I mean, I think it'd be a little funky to start, but I'd be all right with it just to make sure we get all these calls right.
Yeah, it'd be new. It'd be a new transition, but it's part of the game. Can't have the old man game anymore. But
Yeah.
bigger news is that we have the NFL draft coming up in it's about a week and a half. I think the 27th or 25th. So about 10 days from now, we'll have football back in our lives. So I'm super excited about that. We get to see Caleb go to the Bears.
It's what it seems like, right? Caleb, hopefully he's been brushing up on his Chicago lingo and all the good food spots because you're probably
Yeah.
coming here, buddy.
Yep, exactly. And then we'll see how the rest of the draft falls out for my Jets too. Hopefully, I want them just to go and be boring and take an offensive lineman just because that's what they need. Because they signed some guys that are injury prone and just older. So if they want to have any sort of run to do that, if not, take Brock Bowers if he's there.
Did you hear the rumor about them potentially taking Brock? You heard that or no?
The Jets or the Bears?
The Jets.
Oh no! I mean, I've seen a couple mocks. That's why I don't really take what these mocks say because I've also seen Roma Dunze falling to us too.
What pick do you guys have?
We have 10.
That would be interesting. I don't know if Odunze falls to 10,
So, well,
but
here's the thing: is if the Bears take him, then we know, then they won't take him, obviously. But I think what you'll see is that there's gonna be so much like early round trading because people are gonna move up for JJ McCarthy. So we might see 4 to 5 QBs taken in the first round, first 5 picks even. And then after that, then we'll see how the rest falls out. But we're seeing at least 3 receivers go in the first top 10.
it's what it seems like. Yeah, and I also think you're going to get, especially for fantasy football, I think you definitely have to have at least three, if not four, like you said, quarterbacks going, uh, probably top 10 picks, maybe even quicker than that. I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a super flex, if we're breaking it down, I think you have Caleb go one. Depending on where Marvin Harrison goes, it could be debatable. But super flex, you got to go Caleb. Then go second, you do Marvin Harrison. Depending on if he goes to like New England, which I highly doubt because they need a lot more than just Marvin. Um, if he goes to like the Chargers or even Arizona, those are great landing spots for him. And then Malik Neighbors too, another guy that'll be pretty good.
Real quick, if you had the fourth, seventh, and eighth picks in this draft, fantasy wise, do you think you'd be able to get the likes of Brock Bowers, Adunze, and Neighbors?
Neighbors would be tough because it depends if the guy who has number 3 needs a QB or not.
I think the guy in my league is probably taking a QB. I think 1 and 2 in my league are looking like it might be Caleb and Harrison
Yeah,
potentially.
as it should go.
And then 3, I think, might be May. We'll see if he decides to go with Daniels or McCarthy. I think it might be May. I have 4, and then 5 and 6 are really the interesting ones for me. With
They're
who
toss
they
ups. I mean, Adunze should probably go if you don't take him at 4. Bowers, I could see him falling depending on these QBs and their landing spots. I could see him going in the top 6, but we're gonna see a lot of Bowers falling depending on the landing spot. I mean, if he goes to the Jets, he might. I mean, people want to talk about Rodgers' injuries. We'll talk about that on the next pod, but it'll be an interesting how it falls. If you quickly, I'll go through it. So it's 1 Caleb, 2 Marvin, 3 Malik Neighbors for me. If you need a QB,
really
go. Yeah, I'm that high on
even
it.
even with the super flex.
Oh yeah, even with Superflex, and then you have to go with the number 2 would be probably Jayden Daniels. So he'll go 4. You could do Drake May 5. Um, Eileen Bowers with 6. Go Adunze at 7, and then after that, it's kind of a crapshoot, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. I would like what Rich has in Gridiron 4, 5, and 6. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's my one thing. I'm trying to figure out like who might drop. I was thinking I really want Bowers, but my worry is I don't know if he'll be there at 7.
If you need a tight end, that's going to be where that's where you can make that decision. If you really need a tight end, he'll be a pretty much an immediate impact on whatever team he goes to.
I could use a tight end. I could also use multiple receivers. That's kind of my
Well,
conundrum.
the good news for you this year is that this draft is really wide receiver heavy. Next year there's gonna be a handful, but next year is the main, like, not the draft for that or QBs. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, let's hope I've got a little magic in my blood or something. Hopefully we get a couple quarterbacks taken. I've got a plan here. I'm trying to really, my team's been in the pardon my French. My team's been in the shit bowl the last 2 years. Headed to the punishment 2 years ago. This year, my team had the best week in the shit bowl. Don't have to do it. So Tom, right here, buddy. And I mean, I had to, man. I had to do that. But I've got a plan here. I know it's a little risky with 4, 7, and 8, but hopefully I can execute on that, and my team isn't as bad as we've been. So,
Yeah, we'll break down your roster on the pod. We'll do one of those, and I'll give you my opinion on it. So
oh, you'll have some opinions.
I'm sure I will. So, any closing arguments? Anything?
Great week in sports. Like obviously UFC. I'm still on a high from that. I'm still floating on cloud 9. So, um, can't wait for the 2 big events in June, and let's hope the Cubs can take the rubber match tonight or today with Seattle.
Yep. All right, and I'm sure the Sox will win one game next week. That'll be my closing argument. So,
Hey, one game would be good.
yeah, take her away.
Hey, you know what? If you don't like us by now, I don't know what you're doing.